Individuals of Reddit who have experienced crazy sightings such as aliens, cryptid, humanoids, UFOs, black silhouettes aka the shadow people, dogman, mothman, stairs in the woods, etc. What stories can you share? Driving on the highway in Ontario, Canada late in the night. We pulled over off the highway so one of us could make a pit stop. As my friend was urinating, I saw a tall figure in the trees walking around. It started getting closer to my friend, who was just off the highway in the bush. I rolled down the window and told my friend, "There's something in the trees coming at you. Get back to the car." My friend sees it and decides to whistle at it. Sure enough, the thing whistles back. It sounded like it was whistling and humming at the same time. My friend yelled in terror and ran back to the car. We were out of there fast down the highway. And then someone replies with something that I think is actually more interesting than that story. They say, "Oh man, the tall hitchhikers. I work with a lot of truckers, and they've told me stories of seeing people, almost always in the US Southwest, many miles from any cities or anything, hitchhiking on the side of the highway. They look completely normal except for the fact that they appear to be over 10 feet tall." I moved into a new place around 15 and kept hearing scratching noises and rustling outside. I always assumed it was animals. One year, we had to put up some defense on the window, don't remember why, and my father said the grass and bushes around my windows were like how a carpet is after you step on it, and he said that the tracks belonged to either a human or something with human feet. This was years after the first time I heard the rustling and scratching. To know that someone was outside my window still terrifies me. One afternoon during my senior year in high school, a friend of mine and I were hanging out on my back porch. I forgot which of us noticed it first, but we saw a cylindrical-shaped, spinning object traversing the sky. It was low enough that we could clearly see its shape and color, white, but made no sound whatsoever. My friend actually tried to call the airport and ask them if they saw any anomaly, which of course they didn't, so who knows what that thing was. Back in the late 80s, we went on a field trip in the rural Midwest to a lake. We spent the day hiking, fishing, sunbathing, whatever. However, on the way there, we were on a school bus on a backcountry road. There were two cylindrical-shaped or cigar-shaped things in the sky. They looked metallic. They were quite some distance away, but they looked massive, like a half-dozen large passenger airplanes end-to-end type massive. Probably bigger than that. I grew up on the ocean and am fully aware without a frame of reference it is tough to judge size and distance of large objects. The surface looked to have shading and slight differences in appearance, like maybe the object wasn't smooth, but no wings or other aircraft features. The only frame of reference I had was a big hill. These things were behind the hill and seemed just as big. The funny thing is, everyone saw them, but no one wanted to acknowledge it. For a second, I thought I was seeing shit and was going to ask the kid next to me if he saw it, but I looked and saw him staring at them. I asked him what they were and got a shrug and I don't know. I wish there was a cool ending like we were shot at by lasers or we were abducted and forced to fight to the death, but we just drove and eventually they were out of sight. What were they? I have no idea. I have never seen anything that size in the sky before or since, much less two of them. I've worked at racetracks and seen blimps overhead, and that isn't even close for size. I've worked at airports, and even the biggest planes aren't close. The science part of me will always wonder what those were, but the rational part of me knows I'll never find the answer. This is my first post, but it is 100% true. A little bit of backstory. I was around 10 when this happened, and I invited two friends, let's call them Ellie and Tina, to a sleepover at my house. I live next to a train track and opposite a level crossing. A month or so before the sleepover, there was a floodlight installed at the level crossing, and it shone through my window every night. I had white curtains too, so it produced a kind of shadow show. I could see the trees silhouetted against the curtains, sort of like a movie. So the night of the sleepover came, and in all honesty, I don't remember much about before or after the event, but we were laying with our feet underneath the window, so the window was our direct viewing point. It was night and the curtains were drawn, so the floodlight was bright in the window like any other night. We were chatting like normal 10-year-old girls would, but then out of nowhere this figure appeared in the window, silhouetted but clear as anything. It was a full-grown man-shaped thing, crouching down, but there was just something off about the position and shape of the head. All of us saw it, and we panicked. We hid under the covers and stayed quiet. Even that was strange. Why didn't we scream or go and get my mom? I'll never know. The figure was deadly still, but it just crouched there for around 10 minutes. My room is upstairs, and outside my window there was a 2-inch windowsill, but that was it, so a man outside my window was physically impossible. Ellie, Tina, and I just kept peering out to see if it had left, and eventually we looked out in enough time to see him leap to the right. It was terrifying. Now, I don't remember much about after, but no one mentioned it in the morning, so I put it down to being a dream I had. A few months later, the floodlight stopped shining through my window, and over the years we grew apart. We all went from primary to secondary school. I don't know the American equivalent. I'm sorry. And we all got different friends. We said hi to each other in the corridor, but that was about it. In year 11, we all got excited about going to college or 6th form, and everyone was getting everyone to sign yearbooks. Ellie was in my IT class, so I thought it would be nice to get her to sign. We were really close as kids after all, and we got reminiscing about all the good old days when she said, "Hey, you remember that thing outside your window when we were kids?" Wait, what? I thought that was a dream. Ellie and I talked about it for a little longer, and I realized my next lesson was with Tina. I brought it up with her and she remembered it too, so it can't have been a dream. This was a bit of a shock to the system because it actually happened. That night I went home and told my dad, as he is a believer in the supernatural too. I told him the entire story. He looked shocked and confused. At the end of the story, my dad looked me dead in the eyes and he said, "The floodlights have never faced your window." Okay, I haven't shared this story with anyone other than family before. So about a year before I was born, my parents got a Rottweiler named Rufus. Rufus was still a pup when they got him, and apparently while my mom was pregnant with me, he refused to leave her side no matter what. He would lose his shit if she left the house without him. Clearly knew she was pregnant. She told me that from the day I was born he would stick to me like glue, sleeping in my parents' room next to my crib as a baby, and when I got moved into my own room, the first couple of nights they closed the door, but he would scratch at the door and whimper, being restless until they eventually gave up and let him sleep in my room with me. Now I would get scared of the dark, but my parents always told me Rufus was there to keep me safe. And since my bed was very high off the ground, he would crawl under it and sleep there sometimes, especially when fireworks went off or during huge thunderstorms. One day we had an attempted home invasion. The burglars didn't get far as they were met by Rufus breaking in. He did a number on them but unfortunately didn't survive, enough of a number to get them to run for it. From there on, now and then, when I slept with my door closed, I'd hear the clawing and the whimpering again. It would always persist until I got up out of bed and then stop. And one night during a pretty big storm, my mom came in to check on me and told me she could have sworn she saw a tail sticking out from under my bed. We didn't get a new dog for a year or two after that, and about a year in we had some house guests and their child was very allergic to dogs. As they stayed over for the night, the kid was to sleep in my room with me, but whenever he came in his allergies would flare up like crazy, only in my room. I still hear the scratching and whimpering to this day, and I'm convinced Rufus has become sort of a guardian angel for me. I loved that dog. It's kind of sad. This one's really long. Back when I was 9 or something, and we'd moved into our neighboring city. Now this city was a real commercial hub, and most people had their workplaces located there. Naturally, it was difficult for us to find a house, so after about a year of house hunting we found a place. Our old contract was ending, so we jumped on the offer. It was on a high floor and had a great view of the skyline anyway. My memory is a little fuzzy, but this house was weird. I mean, I had some pretty great times there, but the building made you feel uneasy for some reason. I have some photos of the corridors, and even though they were well lit, the photos came out dark. The neighbors never opened the door, and I only had 2 friends there. The first thing that we noticed about the house was that the door always rattled. It had a chain to lock it, so we kinda heard it all day. It was kind of pronounced at night, though. To be honest, everything was elevated at night. I was in the middle of my Five Nights at Freddy's obsession back then, so everything seemed so much more pronounced to me. I could always feel someone watching. I used to do this thing where I blinked and looked at the burn image. I think it's called persistence of vision. Every time I did that, I saw a silhouette of a tall human. No defining features, just a black-colored blob of a head. It was a while before I actually saw shit. The first time I thought I saw my mom entering the adjoining room. The house was small, so I called out to her, only for her to answer from the kitchen. My memories are fuzzy, but I think I definitely saw some shadow figures. They never appeared in brightly lit areas. It was always in the corridor, and they were about 6 feet tall. I never ventured out of my room at night for some reason, not even to get water. Every time I tried, I saw that black silhouette and noped. Once I made a deal with him that if he didn't bother me, I wouldn't bother him, so I guess that's why he didn't hurt me. I also used to talk to him and ask him to make choices for me, like, if I should get the ice cream, please creak the windows. If not, then don't do anything. Silence. Okay, then I'll just get biscuits. I think it was either my imagination or that area was a hotspot for shadow people. The garden out front always had them. That's why our parents forbade us to go up the stairs to the glade area. Creepy as shit, but was kinda normal. We finally moved out, though. After that, the only sighting I had was when a shadow guy stared at me from across the parking lot in front of the house until I flipped him the bird and shut the curtains. I think I told this story before, but here it goes. The only truly weird thing I've experienced. Years ago, in the Navy, I had this really vivid nightmare while we were at sea. I was above decks, being chased by something in a terrible storm. Ship is listing hard. It's the brightest lightning, the loudest thunder, the coldest rain I've ever felt. I'm absolutely certain I'm alone on the ship with something. Just as I make it to a hatch to get inside, it corners me. It's this decrepit old woman covered in seaweed. She cackles and lunges for me as I wake up, like gasp awake in a fit of panic followed by lingering dread. Anyway, I convinced myself that my D&D obsessed brain just conjured up an old-school sea hag and go back to sleep. Next morning, though, getting ready for watch and another guy in the berthing is telling someone, "Must have been something bad at Chow last night, making me have dreams about some seaweed bitch." Then this younger dude pops around the corner like, "You too?" I didn't say shit, pieced out of there to take my watch and tried not to think about it. I've had dreams like that, just, not seaweed related.